Like most things in the world today, choral music has become increasingly globalized through the work of the IFCM and ACDA, because so many other choirs at all levels are taking international tours, far more than you would have seen a generation or two ago. And of course, through technology, through YouTube, I think choirs around the globe are more and more aware of what other choirs are doing. And although we don't have data to back this up, I think it's a result of this globalization that more and more choral conductors, singers are taking choral music beyond the concert hall, beyond the rehearsal hall, to try to address larger problems that affect society, problems like homelessness, poverty, the prevention of the spread of infectious diseases, and lack of access to proper education. And while this is obviously a very positive development, it also presents certain challenges. And so what we have for you today on this panel are three snapshots, individual case studies of choral organizations and choral musicians who are embarking on this kind of work. And they're going to talk about their organizations and what they've done and the successes and the challenges that they've faced. So first, let me introduce each of them to you. First, we have two representatives of the Jirani Cultural Organization. This is an NGO based in South Korea whose goal is to use arts education to improve the lives of young people who find themselves in severely disadvantaged situations. In 2006, they formed the Kenya Jirani Children's Choir, which now consists of 130 children. They've embarked on several international tours and in fact have performed twice here at Yale. In 2010, they formed another chorus, the Harlem Jirani Ensemble, and I believe just last January broke ground on a very ambitious new project in Kenya, an art school that I'm sure they'll tell you more about. We have Diana Solomon Glover, who is the program coordinator for the Harlem Jirani Ensemble, and Helen Cha-Pyo, who is the artistic director of the Jirani Cultural Organization.
You may have received this little brochure that says Jirani Cultural Organization and our concert tour, the second U.S. concert tour that happened with Harlem Jirani. And so I'm just going to take you, this is where Kenya Jirani Choir practices for the past 5 years. And we are, I want to acknowledge Jeff Shin, who's there every day working with our children. Jeff, where are you? Would you stand? He's the senior conductor of Kenya Jirani Choir. He came all the way from Nairobi to join this symposium, and I'm so thrilled he's here. So every day they come after school. Between 3 and 4 they arrive, and from 4 to 6 they have rehearsal, and they have private lessons, and we are currently having 3 different choirs. Moses now currently teaches the advanced choir, which is the training choir for the concert choir that tours. Just to go back, opening ceremony in 2006, there was an opening concert. Immediately, the president of Kenya at that time invited to celebrate the Independence Day. So Jirani, within 7 months of inception, was acknowledged to come as one of the prominent children's groups. So that was a big honor. 2008, this was the first concert tour to the US, and we were so thrilled to be here at Bethel Chapel. And for the past 5 years, every year around Christmas time, Kenya children, about 24 to 28 children, along with all the chaperones and the teachers, will travel to Korea and do annual tours. And one of the most exciting things that we were able to participate was the Samsung's CEO and the founder of the whole company, 70th birthday. We were invited as part of 2 renowned groups to participate in his private party. And one thing that's really neat is that he is helping us a lot with the technology aspect of building the school and equipping us with computers and all. The Kenya Jirani Choir does annual music camp and now just finished second music camp. They're getting ready for another one, third one in August. This was the most recent tour to Korea. We do a lot of cultural studies and historical studies of Kenya as well as the world history. Because the important thing for Reverend Rim, the founder, when he ran into this one child, putting his hand into at the top of the trash heap, and whatever came out went into his mouth, that was the beginning point of Kenya Jirani Choir. And he felt strongly that somebody needs to do something to restore the God-intended self-image, integrity in that child. So education is a big deal, but historical studies, teaching them where they come from and where do we all come from, that's a very important aspect.
Can I ask, Diana, maybe you can tell us a little bit about when the decision was made to bring this program here to the U.S. and why was Harlem chosen? How did that all come about?
Well, I think in my conversations with Reverend Rim, through my having no Korean and Helen having to translate, I think it always was a possibility in his mind, or a thought in his mind, that he wanted this to be a global endeavor. That the idea of lifting or attempting to lift people out of their circumstances so that they can see a larger world, it naturally follows that you want to be able to take that vision out into the larger world. And he also felt that Harlem as the center, what he envisions as the center of American culture, would be the perfect place to locate the hub of the Jirani network.
So we have a little poster that says "We have a dream," and this is the Jirani Cultural Organization's dream. What Diana was just talking about, Jirani Global Network. If you can see that Korean headquarters began at 2005. That was the year that Reverend Rim first visited Kenya and had this vision, and then started the choir in 2006. And in 2010, we began the idea, but officially really incorporated. Harlem Jirani Ensemble was born in 2011, which is just last year. And for the first time, Kenya and Harlem Kids were able to come together because Kenya Kids had their second USA tour, and Harlem Jirani Ensemble as a pilot program was gathered together about 40 children to meet with them, to network with them, and see what would happen. And it was very, very interesting. It was very awkward at first, but they came together in 3 different concerts, including one at Bethel Chapel. Huge challenges, frustrations. You know, if you have all night, we can go into that. So this was the Harlem Jirani Ensemble because of that global network vision for Jirani Cultural Organization. Our dream is to have one in other parts of Asia and also South America, and perhaps in the Stans in near China.
Well, as Helen said, when we embarked upon this in March 2011, it was basically whosoever may come. So we ended up with, in the beginning, with about 40 children, as she said, and through attrition, we started our concerts with about 25 kids from Harlem, which was good because it perfectly matched the number of children from Kenya.
This is a group that was formed in 1998, and of course one of the main reasons that the group exists is to provide opportunities for its members to sing together and to travel together and to have a wonderful time. But the group has also, since its inception, and I think in particular since about 2003 or 2004, made a very conscious effort to also try, sometimes in large ways and often in very small ways, to make the lives of the people in the countries they're visiting better. And I've seen them doing this work in Rio de Janeiro and in South Africa and in Guatemala and in Cuba and in other places. And representing the Yale Alumni Chorus is Tim DeWerff, who's by profession an editor of scholarly books and online resources, but he's served the Yale Alumni Chorus in many capacities. He's been the accompanist, I believe, since the group's inception. And no? Okay, well, Tim always has a small historical correction. Yes. And also the author of the Glee Club's history book, and was the founding treasurer of the Yale Alumni Chorus and has traveled on every single tour, which is 10
major international tours.
10 international tours and other
Plata 2001,
projects.
which we don't count. But
Right.
well, we do.
Yeah, so Tim DeWerff is going to tell us about.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks to all of you. It is indeed a great honor to be empaneled with these distinguished colleagues here and to be part of this, what we believe is the first of very likely many more such symposia to come, embedded within this magnificent international festival that many of us here have been enjoying this week. Jeff gave a wonderful general introduction about what the Yale Alumni Chorus is all about. I will henceforth use the acronym we all use, which is YAC. In fact, our quarterly newsletter is called a Yakophony. It's much easier to say YAC than Yale Alumni Chorus. I would suggest actually that outreach and exchange activities, and we combine those two concepts, outreach doing social service work, humanitarian aid, assistance for those in need, along with exchange, choral exchange with other performers, be they another choir or an orchestra in another country where we're visiting. Of course, the simultaneous presentation is going on right now in the symposium about the musical exchange portion, but I did want to mention that as one aspect. I think outreach has actually been baked into the model. It was there from the beginning, and we may not always succeed in every respect, but I think that when we envision our next activities, we always want to think that outreach is not an incidental add-on to a performance tour, but rather that it's actually the very essence of the entire activity. So there's the musical component, but there's also the interaction with members of the communities that we visit. Our mission statement, in fact, states that our mission is to, quote, promote harmony through choral music at home and abroad. So that's one of the trends, just the fact that the Yale Glee Club itself has had an element of service in its history. The second is the sort of legendary founding and the fact that we were founded by a very charismatic person with great vision, which of course nothing of great import ever happens without a vision to lead it. His name is Mark Dahlhoff, and from the inception, our very first experience as a chorus, not knowing a chorus that would ever be repeated, right? It was just an experiment. We thought we would be lucky to have 40 singers. We ended up traveling with 300 people, more than 200 of them singing voices, to China. And in that very first experience, we arranged for choral exchanges in Xi'an, at the Xi'an Normal School, and we contributed a set of traditional English church bells to this city in central China, and that was one of the key features of the very first tour. So we must credit Mark Dahlhoff for that. One of the main points I wanted to bring forward is, with such the variety of conditions on the ground in the places we visited, we've gone, as I mentioned, 15 different countries, performed in 4 different continents. At this point, 5? I think it's 5, actually. I would know. Of course, the local conditions are so different, so we cannot apply the same model to every situation where we go. So we've tried to be creative and flexible, draw on things that do work in planning what we want to do for outreach in each successive event. And I've thought of some different categories that they can be bunched in. And I'm presenting them in sort of the order of commitment, time commitment, from shortest to greatest. So, one thing we try to resist doing is being a choir that sweeps in, does something sort of nice, we feel good about ourselves, leave, and then there's no lasting impact. So that's definitely a caution against that sort of thing. And I think we have resisted and successfully resisted that phenomenon. So I mean, the most simple example would be just doing a run-out performance. We might have a major orchestra and a major hall, but we're visiting a city. A perfect example. Last summer we visited the Republic of Georgia in the Caucasus, and we traveled to a location where internally displaced persons, those who had lost their homes because of the recent struggles with the great neighbor to the north, Russia, and are not in their native cities, but we gave a special performance just for those members of the community in Georgia. A second example, again, in sort of increasing complexity or commitment level, is doing a choral exchange, actually rehearsing with a fellow chorus and preparing repertoire for public performance. A little more meaningful would be when we will donate the proceeds, the gate proceeds from an event, a designated charity. So some examples of that, we traveled to the Cambridge, England area, gave a performance at the Ely Cathedral with our friend Constantin Urbelian directing, and we donated those ticket receipts, about $5,000 equivalent, to a fund that Constantin Urbelian runs to sponsor fellowships for musicians, young musicians from Armenia, Russia, and the United States. Another example in South Africa, on June 24, 2007, I remember in Pretoria, we presented a concert in the main City Hall auditorium in the Central Square, and with 4 other choruses, all from South Africa, all for the benefit of one of those 4 choruses, which was a blind chorus. They actually the name of the group is the Blind Chorus of Pretoria. And then the concept of outright grants. So I mentioned the handbells that we gave in Xi'an. Another example in Chile, we had a series of educational materials produced in Canada called Crecer Cantando, and gave a grant along with some books for the school children to learn there. One of the more substantial gifts was in South Africa, again in the Port Elizabeth area. There's the Eastern Cape Philharmonic Orchestra, where members of the chorus were encouraged to donate musical instruments or replacement strings for the violins, and I think about 70 different instruments were contributed, and that has continued over time. I don't want to give short shrift to the last 2 categories, but I will be quick. One is, I'll skip straight to maybe what we think is our crowning achievement in terms of outreach, which would be the City of God Youth Chorus, associated with one of the samba schools and one of the outreach agencies in Rio de Janeiro, in the City of God, Shantytown, or Favela as they're known. And this was in conjunction with our 2004 trip. We gave a performance in the favela itself at a local place, and contributed electronic keyboard and a 2-year commitment of $15,000 to support music instruction, T-shirts, supplies, and school, and music, obviously. And we didn't necessarily intend this to become a long-term funding project, and yet that is what it has turned into because of its great success. And one of the tools that we've been able to do is to leverage that influence and get many other funding organizations in the U.S. to join with us, because we are with the Yale Alumni Chorus Foundation, and the foundation has that connotation of being a grant-giving agency, which in this case we are, and because of the success of that group, we've been able to marshal many other forces of interest and revenue and continue this program into almost its 10th year, and no signs of stopping.
And well, actually, if I may, I wanted to say something about that particular initiative, because I think Tim's right that we consider that to be one of the most successful. Part of that, obviously, is the ongoing nature of it. But I think the other part was how it began. And this was my first tour with the alumni in 2004. I had absolutely nothing to do with that project and with the City of God choir. That was all a result of Mark Dahlhoff and other volunteer board members and their sense of vision. But I think it was the fact that we went into the favela, which was not easy to do. And also, I don't know all the details surrounding that, but I know that there were a lot of serious safety concerns bringing a large group of clueless Americans into this very dangerous environment, and a lot of negotiations had to take place with people who lived there, trusted individuals who were working with us and were able to convince the residents of the favela that we were okay. And so it was the fact that it's one thing, and it's a great thing, to invite people to come and hear your concert and, donate the proceeds of that concert to their organization. And obviously that should be encouraged. There should be more of that kind of thing going on all over the world. But going to them, I think, was by far much more meaningful. And I'm just looking over here at Micah, one of our research fellows. Have you been to Cidade de Deus? Yeah. And so this has been another interesting effect. A lot of what the Alumni Chorus has done has filtered down to some of the other undergraduate singing groups. I think the Spizwinks have also been there. The Whiffenpoofs have been there. The Glee Club, when it traveled to South America a few years ago, was also able to build upon the foundation that Yak had laid. I wish we had more time, but I think Molly Stone has been waiting ever so patiently down at the side of the table. And Molly is currently a doctoral student at Northwestern University and conductor of the Chicago Children's Choir Madrigal Singers, and also a chorus in Hyde Park. And she has traveled extensively throughout South Africa, studying South African choral music, has produced a couple of wonderful DVDs that I know have been very instructive for me personally about how to perform South African choral music, and also received a grant several years ago from the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation to return to South Africa and study the ways in which South Africans are using choral music in the struggle against HIV/AIDS. And Molly is here to tell us more about that.
Thank you. I have to say a little bit of there have been exchanges between American choirs and South African choirs who are doing work with HIV, but for the most part, right here in this room is going to be my cross-cultural exchange, because really what I want to do is raise more awareness about the fact that this is going on. I also feel so passionately about it that I'm prone to go off on a million tangents. So I'm going to force myself to read what's on this page first, and then I'll allow myself to talk off the cuff. So, in 2005, as Jeff was saying, I was awarded a generous grant from the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation to study how Black South Africans were using choral music in the struggle against HIV. In a time when Black South Africans were demoralized by accusations that their cultural practices facilitated the spread of the virus, I was interested in studying and raising awareness about how they were, in fact, using elements of their own culture to stop the spread of HIV. While in South Africa, I worked with a number of choirs and programs assisting people with HIV. I learned a lot of songs and conducted interviews and research to gain a deeper understanding of how people used choral music in this particular struggle. Jeff asked earlier, why choral music? And I wanted to definitely talk about that. Singing about HIV in a choir enables people to address HIV as a community, providing people with support networks and breaking down the deadly stigma surrounding the virus. In many communities in South Africa, you still cannot talk about HIV, but you can sing about it. Black South African choral music, as many of you know, played a vital role in the anti-apartheid struggle, and adapting these songs to address current issues gives people a tremendous sense of hope and strength. If Black South Africans draw upon their own cultural resources to stop the spread of HIV, they will feel more empowered in their efforts and more invested in the struggle. This is particularly important, by the way, because in talking about the AIDS crisis in South Africa, of course, there was a huge effort to find African solutions to African problems, which led to refusing help from Western countries, which was actually detrimental. Instead, the health minister was looking at the African potato to try to cure HIV rather than such things as choral music, which is much more helpful. By the way, the African potato is actually bad for you if you have HIV. People sing protest songs, lots of protest songs, against the government and the pharmaceutical companies, criticizing their policies regarding HIV and AIDS. And many of these songs are adapted from the anti-apartheid songs. That's not very surprising, because during the anti-apartheid struggle, people adapted church hymns. So one of the things people like to say in South Africa is, you take out a little Bible here, you put in a little AK-47 there, you got an anti-apartheid song. Well, now you just sort of take out the AK-47 and put in a condom, and you have a song about HIV. And because these songs have such powerful history, they give people such a sense of hope, because they used these songs to overcome past struggles, and it makes them feel like we can use these songs to overcome these struggles today. Choirs also organize incredible educational concerts within their communities. And one of the most powerful examples of this is actually prison choirs in South Africa. The Durban Westville Prison Choir, which I visited sort of by accident, I had to sneak into prison. But it was amazing to talk to their director and work with their choirs and see what they were doing. And one thing that was so fascinating is that the prisoners were allowed to occasionally go outside of the prison to go back into the communities where they had committed crimes and perform songs about HIV prevention to young people, so that they were already getting in the habit of being able to contribute positively to their communities before being re-released. And it was amazing, because all of the prisoners talked about how powerfully the choirs affected them. And I asked the choir director in the prison and the prison guards, who I believe were not supposed to sing with the singers, but couldn't help it. Within like 5 minutes, they were up there dancing. But they said, oh yes, there are many transition choirs. So once you are released, you then continue to sing in choirs in the community that are for ex-prisoners and continue to do HIV prevention education work. So it's very powerful. Now, you're in your living room and you've assembled your family, which in South Africa is not just your nuclear family, but lots of grandmas and aunts and uncles and cousins and small children and pets. And there's a choir there too, and they start to sing songs. Well, first you tell them about your status, and then the choir immediately bursts into song. And again, your family sees that you are not dying of the virus, you're living with it. And everybody is able to sing these songs together, because they purposely sing songs that have been adapted from either church hymns or the struggle, so that the older generation can sing along and immediately join the song and join in a community that is supporting people who are having to deal with this for the first time. So it's just completely remarkable. And then if that's not enough, once it's time to leave, the choir will, of course, talk to the family a lot about their experiences with HIV, and it's like a big group therapy session. But then the patient is offered a spot in the choir. And it was really funny, because I was talking to one of the members of the choir, and she said she just found a whole new lease on life when she joined the choir. And she said she talked a lot about the struggle of coming out to her family. And I thought she meant about her status. It turned out for like 20 minutes she was talking to me about this. She went, no, that I am an alto now. And she's like, Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. I am an alto.
Is there any documentary evidence of the impact that these choral songs are having, or even within specific communities, perhaps where choral groups are more actively getting at this issue, or even anecdotally to show that this is having an effect, or is it too difficult to tell?
I thought, it's too early. If you talk to South Africans directly, they feel that they are having impacts within their communities, and certainly you hear it a lot from just testimonials from the choir members themselves. They will say to you, I was having unsafe, unprotected sex before I learned these songs, and now I understand. I've been sharing experiences with so many other people, because before we couldn't talk about it. So now it's changed my own behavior. So I don't think there are any statistics out yet about this, but definitely when you talk to people one-on-one, you see everybody swearing that it has a very big impact, especially on adults, I think. I'm not sure about children. Yeah.
I would like to thank all 4 of our panelists, Molly, Tim, Diana, Helen, for the great work you're doing.